In this edition of the Primetime Newscast on ETV, we take you to Bamenda Northwest region of the country, precisely in the Ngokutunja division, where a baby was retrieved alive and safe after he was reportedly dumped in the toilet by the mother. And also in this newscast, fire continues to ravage commercial structures as well as homes in Cameroon, the most recent being a coffee warehouse here in Bonaberi, in the economic capital Douala, that was completely reduced into ashes. That was today. Plus, we take you to Idenau in the southwest region of the country, where women say that free use is enough to be without potable water. They chose to demonstrate or air out their grievances on the International Women's Day. You are watching the Primetime Newscast on Equinox Television. Good evening to you viewers. We thank you so much for joining us in this edition of the Primetime Newscast on ETV. We begin right away here in the economic capital Douala, where the entire content of a coffee warehouse in Bonaberi, Douala, was perished into flames following a fire outbreak which took place. That is today, and material damage has been estimated at millions of francs CFA. Staff Lady Annabella tells us more in the following report.
Owners of this coffee warehouse tell us that millions of francs CFA has been lost as fire ravaged the content of the parking room, which also accommodated this car, a brand new one, before the incident. Several bags of dried coffee ready for exportation have just been burnt to ashes. This eyewitness explains what actually happened.
One time, so I want to go to work this morning. I came to the road today. I saw the fire outside, see smoke all around. So we try to alert people who don't have water around. But you have many fire with smoke there. We cannot have courage to afford the current with the light.
Firefighters were alerted. They battled with the flames, but the damage had already been caused. The actual origin of the fire is still not known, but it is widely speculated the warehouse was ignited after a short circuit.
I don't know because I see that the current caused all this thing. Because we still understand something that is slow.
Fire incidents are now so recurrent in Cameroon, especially in Douala, that observers continue to ask the question, who will be the next victim?
Of course, who is going to be the next victim? And that is coming barely 24 hours after fire equally consumed the entire content of the Oanu supermarket that was in the capital city over the weekend. Now, a newborn baby was discovered live and safe in a pit toilet in Bamali, a locality in the Ngokutunja division in the northwest region of Cameroon. And neighbors have said the mother of the child intentionally dumped the baby in the pit toilet, but the mother claims that the child suddenly came out as she visited the toilet. Details in the following report by our Bamenda-based correspondent from Kenneth.
This newborn baby boy was picked out of this toilet in Melakwata Bamali Ngokutunja division in the northwest region, hours after the mother of the baby boy, by name Kiwe Emelda, put to birth the baby and dumped him in this toilet. According to a nurse of the Ndop district hospital, the mother of the child said she went to the toilet and something came out of her and fell in the toilet. Something which she thought it was blood cloth, since she saw blood on her legs. For this lady who championed the removal of the baby from the toilet.
The begin there, they give me to Luka. They don't be agree for Luka. I thought say I must scatter that toilet. They'll go down. If the begin don't die like that, they don't feel person don't feel be so. Then they would ship on top person. Me, I will scatter and me the carry. If you not die one way, the one move, you don't die. They will wash it. Then the bury had the very person.
We not sure that picking enter that toilet today. Now yesterday. They put up in virtually yesterday. And she's a woman too way, he support me, make her enter today. And I enter by God's grace, I come out with the Pekin they alive. Now so.
Cleared his airway, we've cleaned him up, and then we've begun with medication. The child is currently thriving well. The United Services have been contacted, the social welfare contacted, and forces of law and order.
Meanwhile, the child has been given the name Moses.
That was the child that was retrieved in a pit toilet in Bamenda Northwest region of the country. Now we take a look back at how the International Women's Day was celebrated in most parts of Cameroon. We take our first stop in Edinau in the southwest region of the country, where the women there choose the International Women's Day to air out their accumulated grievances. They complained that they have been for over 3 years now without potable water, and they unanimously took to the street and paralyzing several activities. Details in the following report. These women are not in some sort of merry-making. They are not reacting either to welcoming news. They are simply making their accumulated grievances heard in a loud voice. We are in Edinau, a locality in the southwest region of the country, where women have angrily turned to the streets, denouncing years of absence of potable water. The women complain that taps have virtually gone dry for at least 3 years now. Several children in Edinau, according to them, have lost their lives in road accidents on their way to fetch the precious liquid.
When you said begin, I made a cross for taco for stream. Motor is jammed and then he dies.
They even say the most recent incident was when a child was knocked down and later died by a vehicle belonging to an official resident in Edinau. This woman explains that efforts at getting the administration look into the situation have yielded no fruits, and that the DO of Edinau remained indifferent to their plight when they marched to his office. Reason why they choose not to celebrate the International Women's Day alongside their counterparts worldwide, but to protest and also demonstrate the ills they have been through for over 3 years. That is how the International Women's Day took place in Edinau in the southwest region of the country. We take you now to the northwest region to see that women on the 8th of March brandished banners and placards condemning all forms of violence against women and the young girls. And as some said, eliminating violence against women has a lot to do with as far as sensitizing both the male and the female folk is concerned. Details in the following report once again by Abamenda-based correspondent from Kenneth.
Just like their female counterpart in and out of the country, the women of the Northwest region join in celebrating the 28th edition of the National Women's Day. Under the theme, Stop Violence Against Women and Girl Child. In Bamenda, the occasion was presided at by Northwest Governor Lele Lafrique Adolphe with his key message.
To the women of Northwest region, to endeavor more to accompany the head of state in his wish for our country becoming an emerging one.
Participating in the March Past exercise were women of different groups, with some putting on assorted dresses as a result of the shortage of the fabrics in Bamenda. These women took part in the celebration and had this to say.
Another way to combat this violence is also to go out, meet the men folk, let them understand what violence is all about. Because there are some violence that they are mental, they are physical, but they don't know. But when you come out and you educate the public, they will understand what violence is all about.
We want women to be responsible. We want them to be really responsible in any kind of violence. That is, some are doing it physically, some are not doing it physically. So we want it in any form that we push to eliminate all those type of things. That's our theme for this year. We should eliminate violence.
A day when these women fed nothing other than items of such. A day when onlookers are also part of the event, and a day of total enjoyment and total best time.
And if women in Cameroon are denouncing all forms of violence, they are also saying that they shouldn't be left out in the upcoming senatorial elections in the country. A network of Association of Cameroonian Women has called on leaders of political parties to endorse the candidacy of women in their various parties for upcoming elections in the country. The network called More Women in Politics made their plea that was over the weekend during a meeting which took place in the capital city, Yaoundé. Yaoundé-based correspondent Rulana Kon tells us more in the following report.
The number of Cameroonian women in elective functions is not boosting. In the National Assembly, there are 25 female deputies out of 180. In councils, there are 22 mayors out of over 300 municipalities. This meeting in Yaoundé at the weekend seeks to encourage more women in elective functions, especially in politics, with the upcoming senatorial election. Dubbed More Women in Politics, the network is appealing to leaders of political parties to endorse the candidacy of women for gender equilibrium in the Senate. The role of the woman in politics cannot be undermined.
We cannot build democracy without women. We cannot consolidate our democracy without women. That is the reason why we are clearly calling for women to be part of these elections.
Stats indicate that Cameroonian women are not interested in politics for cultural and other reasons.
Now we remain in that part of Cameroon where the first ordinary session of Parliament for the year 2013 opened today. That was in the central region of the country. During the one-month session, the Member of Parliament would elect a new Bureau of the Assembly and also go about their normal activities of scrutinizing bills. And today's session is being chaired by the eldest Member of Parliament of the House, and the session is holding on the eve of senatorial elections that is billed on the 14th of April 2013. We shall be coming back to that in a subsequent newscast. Now, Lego Mines here in the economic capital Douala have said that all Cameroonians, irrespective of their post of responsibilities, are eligible to be a senator in Cameroon. According to Article 158 of the Electoral Code, they can go for elections in the country. And they were speaking, and Rani Bell Satowala, who spoke to some Lego Mines here in the economic capital Douala, tells us in the following report that political parties have up to the 14th of March to present the list of the regional of their various candidates for the upcoming senatorial elections in the country. Rani Bell Satowala tells us more in the following report.
On the eve of the closure of the entry list for senatorial candidates ahead of the April 14 elections, questions are still being raised concerning the compatibility of some individuals vying for that upper house. Unlike what the school of thought believes as the incompatibility of certain candidates because of their present post of responsibilities, Legal Minds have made it very clear that it is upon exercise of what functions that public figures like directors of state corporations or individuals holding elective offices, among others, cannot maintain both functions.
There is no provision of the law which disallows mayors, for example, or even parliamentarians to vie as senators. The provisions of the law on the eligibility and compatibility do not say that a mayor should not, or a parliamentarian should not vie as senator. On the contrary, the provisions in the incompatibility provisions, especially Article 162 of the Electoral Code, says that the incompatibility is in the exercise of the duty.
To the barrister at law, such individuals only have to fulfill Article 158 of the Electoral Code, stating clearly the eligibility of persons to be senators in Cameroon.
If they fulfill all the other conditions of eligibility, 40 years, being Cameroonian of origin, showing that they are taxpayers or not, whether they are not owing taxes, they are not deprived of their civic rights, they are not in prison, for example, they fulfill all those conditions of eligibility, they can be candidates for Senate.
Other legal practitioners hold that it is at the level of the political parties that there might be a problem of the representation of the party accorded only to certain individuals, but explained that in the advent of such persons becoming senators finally, they must have to drop one of their functions.
And talking about the senatorial elections, many political parties here in Cameroon, precisely in the capital city Yaoundé, have begun raising up. Members of the executive committee of the UNDP party met in Yaoundé, that was today, for the final session of the party's candidates for the 2013 senatorials in the country. The party of Bello Buba Maigari is going to have a list of 7 senators in all the 10 regions of the country. Now, the Yaoundé meeting was chaired by one of the vice presidents of the party. And here in the following excerpt, we have Ashut Chochiu Mandi, one of the party's VPs, who now throws more light on the brain behind, on the raison d'etre of the meeting, which took place in Yaoundé today.
We are meeting to do a selection of the candidature. People who have applied, we are scrutinizing the list. We have a criteria which is written down, and we are going to act just accordance to the criteria. Age, the age variable, which is you must be more than 4 years.
That is the vice president, one of the vice presidents of the UNDP party, throwing more light on the meeting to elect members, or the party's members, to take place in the upcoming senatorial elections in the country. He was being interviewed by Yaoundé-based correspondent Roland Ako. Now, the legitimacy and legality of candidates and political parties vying for posts in the upcoming senatorial elections in the country still remains preoccupying. This is after 7 factions of the UPC political party are poised for the upcoming senatorials in the country. Yaoundé-based correspondent once again Roland Ako in the following report tells us the intentions of the various factions of the UPC parties.
3 factions of the UPC party are prepared for the upcoming election of senators.
L'Union des populations du Cameroun,
speaking to reporters at the weekend in Yaoundé, Babot Lipot, Secretary General of one of the factions, said his faction would place candidates in 5 of the 10 regions of Cameroon. Babot Lipot says his legitimacy as leader of the UPC stems from his election during a congress of the party in Yaoundé September last year. Papin Doumbé is the secretary of one of the factions of the UPC. He tells us they are also set for the senatorial.
Que ce soit au Conseil constitutionnel qui va venir, que ce soit au sénatorial, l'UPC doit être présente.
He describes as activist the other factions. He says the legality of their own faction is derived from the 2012 Congress of the party in Douala.
Que disent les textes? Si nous sommes 24 et nous sommes 18, ils sont 4, ils sont la moitié au moins des membres. Donc tout ce qu'ils font ne peut pas prospérer.
Bernard Wanji is president of the other faction of the UPC. His faction is also prepared for the election of senators. He says the legitimacy of his faction stems from a congress of the party in Ezeka last year.
Écoutez, je tiens d'abord la légitimité du fait que nous avons un programme politique et nous avons un projet de société qui est conforme aux aspirations des militants de l'UPC.
Now that all the factions claim to be legitimate, which one will Elekam choose for the senatorial? That is the question. These ruptures follow the death of Augustine Federico Duct, the then scribe of the UPC party, in 2011.
From the central region of Cameroon, we take you now to Limbe Southwest region of the country, where the defense lawyers of the deposed general manager of the national oil refinery Sonara have written a petition demanding the replacement of the presiding magistrate in the case. They reportedly filed in a petition during the hearing on the case that was scheduled to take place today in Limbe Southwest region of Cameroon, and the case has been adjourned to the 18th of March 2013. Those are images of the installation ceremony of the new general manager of Sonara, which took place that was last month. Now, that does it for this segment of the news, but Talking Point is up next. Thanks indeed, viewers, for joining us tonight on Talking Point. The question on eligibility and also participation of political parties in upcoming senatorials in the country are still preoccupying. And tonight we have as guest a member of the Social Democratic Front, Mr. Barrister Charles Atanga. Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Good evening, Mimi, and thank you too for the invitation. Thank you to our listeners.
You came here as one of the members of the Social Democratic Front who actually talked about boycotting the upcoming senatorial elections in the country, and some few days after you say you are going to take part suddenly in the elections. Why the sudden change of mind?
Well, you know, when the Electoral College was convened on February 27th, the SDF came out clear and said it was illegitimate and illegal for the college to elect senators, and said it was going to do everything for the elections not to hold. And it is true, people interpreted it their own way and said we were boycotting. But we remember having said that the elections were improper and that we were in discussions and dialogue with the regime, with the party. But
I think the chairman of the party said that the election, he will stop the elections from holding.
Yes,
and that he will make everything possible.
We are saying the same thing. We are saying the same thing. You know, your quick reaction, especially when it is correct. We keep on saying that, but for the dialogue that we had with the ruling party, we wouldn't have gone, and we would have made everything possible for it not to hold. But after the dialogue, remember we're in politics. You may not know what I have in mind until you speak with me, and I explain why I think a certain act is good or bad at a certain time. And then in politics, we must also learn that it is an act of compromise. Like we said, after the dialogue, we saw that for the supreme interest of the state, it was proper for the SDF to participate.
First of all, you talked about the fact that the members are not legitimate.
Yes.
And now you have accepted now to take part in the senatorial elections. Is it not questionable?
This does not mean that the electorate has suddenly become legitimate. The electorate will never be legitimate because they are beyond their mandate. That one is clear. And that is why we called for dialogue. That if we are going into such an election, it is good for the image of the country that we understand why, and then we see if we can make it better.
What
like
do you mean
said,
by for the good of the image of the country? When
not only the image of the country, but for the supreme interest of Cameroon. I keep on saying, because the SDF is a political party that holds the aspiration of a majority of Cameroonians.
Of course.
Whether we like it or not. So we examined and saw that this is a Senate, the first time we are coming with this institution. Even though we've made it to be as bad as it is, but then the aspirations of Cameroonians need to be represented in this Senate. You understand? And don't forget that for the last 22 or 23 years, we've had instances where we've not gone for election, and we've understood that our adversaries don't care, because in fact when they don't even come, to some of them it is even better, so that they carry out their funny interest for this nation. But the SDF saw that no, rather than stay, let's go after the dialogue we had, hoping that we'll make of it at least something good, even though it is already limping.
You rightly talked about the supreme interests of Cameroonians who are looking up to the Social Democratic Front. And when the chairman of the party was talking about maybe boycotting or staying away from the elections or making sure that it doesn't take place at all in the country, he made his point clear. But now that you have come back to your decision, what are you telling Cameroonians?
You know, we've always been accused of saying one thing or changing. But I keep on telling people that we are in politics. Is that not true? It is part of the strategy. You forget that we started sometime in 2007 talking about no good laws, no elections. It didn't mean we ended up going to elections. But you would agree with me.
Laws.
Yes, since 1992, we've always been saying that the laws are bad. But the best way of criticizing and making amends in the system is by participating. We know that very well. In 2011, we said no good laws, no elections. We said that, and it has yielded fruit. You remember that Elecam said recompilation was impossible, but today we are doing recompilation. Not only recompilation of the electoral register, but with the semblance of biometry, still because of our pressure. So this pressure needs to remain constant. You understand? It needs to remain constant. That is why we must come out at times, show that we are annoyed, and then hoping, because I don't see the chairman coming to show how he's annoyed to Cameroonians because he wants something for himself. When he's saying that the electorate is illegitimate, it is for Cameroonians. So I think, I don't want to call it the threat, but the frankness in our position led to some dialogue, and I think the other side too should listen. That is what we want in this country.
And what is also curious is that the chairman of the SDF, maybe he wished to talk to the head of state, and he ended up talking with the director of the civil cabinet. Was the demands of the party, were the demands met?
You should understand one thing, that the message is what is important, not to whom the message is given. It is true. We would have loved, like the chairman said, after the New Year wishes, the head of state had to receive him, and later on sent his emissaries to him. And on Thursday last week, the head of state too had to receive him, and then send his emissaries. You see, we cannot, or we shouldn't have retreated because it wasn't the head of state. No. The very fact that he sent somebody, at least it showed that he wanted to listen to us. And when somebody wants to listen to you, you should say what you have to say. So the person who received the chairman is not important. What is important is the message, and the message is known to Cameroonians.
And what are some of those conditions that made the Social Democratic Front change its mind suddenly?
No, like we keep on saying, you know, it's a political decision, and you get the goodness of a political decision in its execution. Let Cameroonians wait. In the coming weeks and the coming months, they will see that it was a very, very wise decision, as the party has always been taking wise decisions since 1990. Don't forget that in 1992, there are people who clamored that, oh, the SDF should have gone for war. The chairman at that time said no, he didn't want to be Cameroonians. So the president of stones, he wants to be president of human beings. And the bet for him, I think the Rwandan genocide before happening in 1994, it would have happened in Cameroon. So this is somebody who goes out for peace. You understand? So when he looks at that and he sees, he knows the intention on the other side. And rather than sell Cameroonians or lead them to some kind of trouble, he prefers to go the gentle way. So let's not misquote him, saying that he asked for people to take out matches. No, it was an expression of anger.
That is what
the situation. I'm not saying misquote him or misunderstand him. You understand? It was an expression of anger, which was very, very necessary and commensurate to the act. I mean, when you are taking people who are illegitimate to vote senators, members of an upper chamber of an assembly.
It means that was an immediate reaction.
Not only matter of an immediate reaction, but what he means, or what he meant by that was that this is a kind of action that can lead us to this kind of situation. But then, like a man of peace, that's even one of the reasons too. After considering that, he sees that no, for example, the SDF says it's not going. There are people who may think in that light. But for the supreme interest, like I keep on saying, and like he said, for the supreme interest of this country, we prefer to go, because no matter what, we'll definitely have senators there, and we'll be speaking or talking in the Senate about Cameroon, and we will have the aspirations of the Cameroonians through the SDF, which will be marketed in the Senate. Whether I like it or not, since 1997, the SDF has always been a minority in parliament, but the actions of the SDF in parliament are untold. In fact, you cannot count them today. What we said 15 years ago and it was denied, it has been realized today. And that is why we have a government in prison. And what we say today, you may not accept it today, but it will be accepted tomorrow. So we have an interest to keep sensitizing, keep the political doctrine in Cameroon.
Now, the National Legal Advisor of the Social Democratic Front talked about taking part in the masquerade. It means that you're taking part in something that you know that is blurry, that is not clear, but you are just taking part.
Yes, you understand. This goes to say that our position has not changed. If, for example, after meeting the head of state's emissary and the SDF now started saying that no, conditions are good to go for election, that is when Cameroonians should have questioned. But then, since Cameroonians are not duped and they know, that is why he said it's a masquerade, because under normal circumstances, it cannot take place. But since there are other reasons why it must take place now, the SDF, for the good interest of Cameroonians, should participate so as to protect the interest of Cameroonians in what we call the masquerade.
Thanks indeed, Barrister Charles Atanga, for joining us tonight on Talking Point.
Thank you too.
And to you viewers, we thank you so much for watching. We have come to the end of this edition of the Primetime Newscast on ETV. Have a wonderful stay in the company of our programs, and good evening to you all.